Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs Daily War Room Briefing. Today we are on day 90 of Israel's war with the terrorists in Gaza. The IDF forces are continuing to operate all through the Gaza Strip now, really solidifying their control of the northern Gaza area, and now working more and more in the southern area, in Khan Yunis, in Nuseirat, and even in Rafah. What we've seen there in the last few days is really intensive activities, trying to really make sure that all of the terrorist cells from the northern Gaza Strip have been entirely destroyed. Reports yesterday that the IDF had been also actively destroying the terror tunnels and the compounds that had been built underneath the El Shifa hospital to ensure that they could never be used again for terror. And we saw also the report of the US intelligence agencies also confirming that that area, that hospital had been used indeed as a Hamas command center, and that it had been evacuated just after the start of the war, after obviously we saw the hostages being led through the hospital and then into other directions. That's really the main developments going on in the Gaza Strip at the moment. What we're seeing in Judea and Samaria also is the continuation of activities against Hamas, against the other terrorist organizations, and that is something which is ongoing. There have now been, according to IDF reports, some 2,500 people being arrested, most of them being members of Hamas. In the last few days, we've also seen reports about the arrest of Khalida Jarrar, the head of the PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. This is another one of the Palestinian terrorist organizations, communist in its orientation, but has also actively been involved in many acts of terror, including the 2019 murder of Rina Shnerb, the 2001 murder of the Israeli Minister of Tourism at the time, Rehavam Ze'evi, and also was active during the October 7 massacre, and its terrorists took actually some of the hostages and is continuing to hold them to this day, as far as has been published. What we're seeing also in the more regional developments is the warning issued by the US and other members of the coalition to the Houthis, declaring that their continued interference with the freedom of navigation around Bab el-Mandeb, around the Straits of Tiran, coming up into the Red Sea and then through the Suez Canal, is something that will no longer be tolerated, and that the coalition forces will be taking a much stronger hand against those activities. What I've left until last is the update on Lebanon, because today we are joined by a special guest, Colonel in the Reserves, Dr. Jacques Neriah, and we were going to be specifically talking also about the wider implications of what's going on regionally, but specifically on Lebanon and the ramifications of the strike 2 days ago. Excuse me, Israel's strike 2 days ago in Lebanon, killing one of the senior heads of Hamas, Saleh al-Arouri, a terrorist who was responsible for much of the terrorist activity in Judea and Samaria. He was an integral part of the planning of the October 7 massacre in Judea and Samaria 8 years ago. Actually, my math is bad. It's now almost 10 years ago. He was responsible for the kidnapping and the murder of the 3 teenage Israeli boys in Gush Etzion in July 2014. So really, he's been a terrorist working for a very long time on all different fronts. So, Jack, thank you for joining us today. Let's get into a little bit of that discussion of Israel's actions in Lebanon. We'd seen also previous statements by Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, who really is, for all the intents and purposes, the de facto leader of Lebanon. I'm sure you'll just correct me where I need to be corrected on that as well. Obviously, there's a Lebanese government which isn't Hassan Nasrallah and Hezbollah, but he was really he's really the one pulling the strings to a great extent. And he had reportedly said that any time that Israel struck any of the Hamas members in Lebanon, that would immediately require and bring on a massive Hezbollah response. In the meantime, we haven't seen, touch wood, we haven't seen such a response. Yesterday, we saw a long press conference with Hassan Nasrallah. So maybe you can give us like the ramifications both of the strike, how it's been perceived in Lebanon, and really what Hassan Nasrallah said yesterday.
Thank you, Maurice. I'll try to be as brief as possible and leave time for questions if there are. In fact, what happened the day before yesterday in Beirut by targeting Saleh al-Arouri in his apartment and supposedly done by Israel, this could be a game changer in the whole conflict of the beginning of the 7th October. Because the ramifications are huge. I mean, the action carried by Israel has in fact exposed Hezbollah's policy towards Israel since the beginning of this war. And in fact, what we have seen till now was a decision by Hezbollah to join the effort against Israel, but to limit himself to an attrition war, and certainly on a geographical depth that would be about 5 to 7 kilometers inside Israel, the same on 5 and 7 kilometers inside Lebanon, and stretching from Nakura to the Sheba farm, which is a front of 100 kilometers. This is what Hezbollah had in mind. In fact, I mean, till the day before yesterday, this was supposed to continue and to paralyze most of some of the units that Israel had deployed in the area. So, and the fact that this activity had provoked the evacuation of about 80,000 inhabitants along the border, and this was the big dilemma concerning Israel. So, as I said, the action taken by Israel has revealed this policy, and it has cornered Hezbollah in a very, very difficult position, because now he has to prove that he is faithful to his promise. And as he said, the last sentence of his speech, and I heard the speech from beginning to the end, he said that a promise is a promise, and what happened in Lebanon would not remain with no response, and would not remain without any punishment. What did he mean? A few months ago in the summer, he said that any attack by Israel, any targeting by Israel of any Palestinian, Iranian or Lebanese on Lebanese soil would be responded in kind by Hezbollah, because this is the Hezbollah sees itself not only as a resistance but as the protector of Lebanon, and as you said earlier, the only party that exists in Lebanon and holds the country as it is. So the answer, we don't know yet what sort of reaction Hezbollah is preparing. There are lots of options, but definitely from some of the declarations of Hezbollah officials, it seems that the answer will come from Lebanon. It's not. I mean, it will be targeting something in Israel, which I don't know yet to tell, but something of a high quality in order to be equal to the blow that Hezbollah received. You have to understand, this is the first time, and Nasrallah said it very clearly, this is the first time since 2006 that Israel is hitting in the sanctuary of Hezbollah, in the Dahya. This is something unprecedented from Hassan Nasrallah point of view, and he cannot accept this fact without responding. As such, it seems that Hezbollah will respond in a way that will provoke Israel. I mean, Israel has signified constantly since these last days that its patience has ended, and we are getting more and more impatient facing all the provocation of Hezbollah. And in fact, as the chief of staff said yesterday, we are ready. were ready to attack Hezbollah. So I mean, and all the promises we had earlier concerning the attitude of the U.S. administration, asking us not to begin a war with Hezbollah in order not to transform the conflict between us and Hamas into a regional conflict. Well, we are ending this. We are reaching an end to that, because as strong as the reaction of Hezbollah would be, the reaction of Israel will be much more stronger, and certainly will be devastating concerning South Lebanon and other areas in Lebanon that would be targeted by Israel. So we are at you know, maybe at the premises of entering a new era in this war, a new period in this war, where we will have to face not Hamas, a small militia that is right now holding more than 90 days without breaking. We will be facing an army of 100,000 militiamen, but we're equipped with about 200, around 150 to 200,000 missiles. Some of them very precision missile, and they can reach any target in Israel. We saw Hezbollah, Nasrallah's Hezbollah, showing us a map with all the targets that he had chosen in Israel, saying that Israel is only a rectangle that can be hit from at all parts. So this is the situation right now. I think that before doing anything, Hezbollah will consult with his masters in Tehran, and according to the atmosphere right now in Tehran, I think that Tehran will definitely tell or instruct Hezbollah to direct some of its weapons towards Israel. There is a possibility that Hezbollah will hide behind the Palestinian factions. He would say, okay, Israel has hit Hamas. Okay, let those Palestinian factions that are in Lebanon fire at Israel as long as they want and whatever they want. And if Israel will have to respond, then we will say very clearly, this is Hamas. These are Palestinian factions. It's not Hezbollah. But I don't believe that Hassan Nasrallah can afford to do such a thing. He is too proud in order to do that. In any case, on Friday, at 2:30, there is another speech in which Hassan Nasrallah has promised to widen the scope about how he sees Israel, and we have to be very careful in listening what he says. He believes that all the events that happened since the 7th of October only proves one thing, that Israel is weak and that Israel is dependent on the United States, and without the United States it cannot do anything. He says that Israel has mobilized more than 500,000 soldiers and is not even capable of subduing Hamas, a small militia of 40,000 fighters. So this is his idea. He has put his view in 10 points of how he sees the situation in Israel, citing and quoting Israeli press, quoting Israeli generals who appear on the TV, and analyzing the situation and saying that after all, Israel is about to disappear from the horizon. It will take some time, but this is the beginning of the end of Israel. This is what the message that Hezbollah, that Nasrallah is sending to the world and to his audience, and of course to the Arab world, in order to hear them very clearly that he is going to engage in a war, total war with Israel, as soon as he believes that the time is ripe for that.
Really a frightening understanding of Nasrallah in general, Jacques, I have to say. To what extent, let's talk a little bit about Lebanon. Lebanon is to a great extent a failed country. It declared bankruptcy already a few years ago after the explosion in Beirut, also caused by Hezbollah. When the French French president wanted to visit Beirut, France had to pay for the electricity to turn on the systems at the international airport. And now for the last year, Lebanon hasn't had a president. It has no really working governing body. How would Lebanon really? What do the Lebanese people say to Hassan Nasrallah? Because they understand, whilst Hassan Nasrallah is full of rhetoric of what he's going to do to Israel and where he's going to attack in Israel, Israel hasn't at all been holding back on its response, saying that Israel will, if it were attacked to that great an extent, rather than the war of attrition that we've been going through, that Israel will if I'm not misquoting the Minister of Defense, return Lebanon as well
to the Iron Age, to the Stone Age.
To the Stone Age, and that means destroying entirely whatever's left and whatever has been rehabilitated of Lebanon's infrastructure, which all supports obviously Hezbollah's war effort, and the implications and the impact on Lebanon will be tremendous. What are the Lebanese saying? Is there any objection? Is in Gaza, we tend to say that Gaza is Hamas, Gaza is Yahya Sinwar. Is that the same in Lebanon? Lebanon is Hezbollah, Hezbollah is Hassan Nasrallah, and both of them, whether it be Hamas or Hezbollah, all work according to the flute and the direction of the mullahs in Iran. Is that an accurate description of Lebanon?
Well, Hezbollah is conducting a mini state in Lebanon. When you look at the structure of the body politic in Lebanon, as you said, there's no president since October 22. There is a transitional government and there is a transitional prime minister. And this government cannot make any decision because it has, according to the constitution, no authority to do so. So when we talk about, for instance, Hochstein coming to Lebanon and trying to convince the Israel that if we solve the problem of the 13 points on the border between us and Lebanon, then the Hezbollah will count down and will withdraw, we are dreaming. This is daydreaming, because Hezbollah is saying very clearly two things. He said not only the 13 points, there's a border, 1923. International border, recognized border internationally. This is the border we want. And if we look at the map of 1923, we look that part of the Galilee, the actual Galilee here inside Israel, is part of Lebanon at the time. So this is this situation that we cannot accept. Moreover, Hezbollah says very clearly, UNIFIL hasn't to be stationed on Lebanese soil. Why should it be on Lebanese soil? It should be on the Israeli side. We don't want UNIFIL on that. Now, facing this, there's nobody in Lebanon that can say no. The only thing that you can hear is from Christian leaders and from some Sunni leaders that would be a disaster for Lebanon to engage in a war with Israel. This is the only thing that the farther that they can do, they can go. More than that, they cannot do. They are unable to counter Hezbollah, certainly not to counter this militia. Believing that, and taking this in consideration, and hearing what Hochstein has to bring us and what we will be speaking to the Lebanese, there is no political solution at this point. If there is no political solution, the only way Israel will have to in order for its inhabitants to return to the border, and no one of those inhabitants will accept to be on the border when the Radwan units will be on the other side of the obstacle, because just from their houses really on the border, they are farming on the border, and Hezbollah is just patrolling all over, and this is a situation that can remind all those inhabitants what happened on the 7th of October in the Gaza Strip. So as a solution, Israel is saying, okay, if there is no diplomatic solution with Lebanon, we cannot sign anything with Lebanon because there is no president, there is no government, the constitution forbids anything. So the only solution is in fact manu militari. We have to use weapons in order to convince Hezbollah to withdraw to the Litani or to 40 kilometers, whatever. So this is the situation. We are trapped in a situation where we have asked the inhabitants to just evacuate, hoping that they will come back, but they cannot come back. And Hezbollah is just playing with us. And right now, as I said earlier, the game has changed. presumed assassination of Saleh al-Arouri in Beirut. So this is a very complex situation, very complicated. And right now there is no way that we can reach a solution or to calm down the situation and reach a sort of agreement with Hezbollah or the Lebanese government, which is not existent.
Truly amazingly, just a year and a bit ago, October, just before Michel Aoun, the Lebanese president, finished his 4-year term and was about to leave, literally the day before, after discussions from the same and intervention from the same Amos Hochstein, Israel readjusted its demands and its position regarding the exclusive economic zone that borders with Lebanon. Really, what Israel did is it gave up on 20 years of one position and gave into Hezbollah's maximalist demands. Again, at the behest
and this Morid was said at the time that will calm down Hezbollah, then you will have some time for peace and so on and so on. And the Lebanese realized that in Block 9, which they wanted so much, there's no gas. There's no gas.
At the moment, they haven't found anything.
They haven't found anything, and they tried now to put a tender on the Block 4, the adjacent to Block 9, and nobody just wanted to buy it. Nobody. So I mean, this is the result of American diplomacy. There is a maritime border where we lost whatever we lost in the negotiations with Lebanon, and we are not ready. I mean, the Israeli government is not ready to lose the 13 points in order to find ourselves again being threatened and bargained by Hezbollah on the seven villages he claims that are part of Lebanon. 5 of them are Shiite villages, 2 are Christian villages that were left by their inhabitants in 1948, and since then have become kibbutzim and moshavim along the border with Lebanon.
So given that very clear position, Jacques, and very clear understanding both of historically and of the position of Hezbollah, how would you, what would you say to the Israeli government and then at the new suggestion of Amos Hochstein and the US administration to now try and re-implement or implement for the first time UN Security Resolution 1701, even if Hezbollah was to move to north of the Litani? Really, it's an impossible solution, because how can you ever trust an organization which is a terrorist organization, which still demands Israel's destruction, continues on with the aggression no matter what agreement is signed with them, and really is untrustworthy? So how is it, do you think, that the Americans still think that that could be a workable situation in order to diffuse the conflict now with Hezbollah?
Well, you know, the Americans are in a way naive. I mean, they don't understand the Lebanese reality. I mean, look at what happened between Lebanon and the French. Macron came twice. The Le Drian was on a shuttle diplomacy, and then Colonna came there and nothing. They tried to convince the Lebanese to vote for a president, and they haven't succeeded into convincing the Lebanese parties to vote that. What the Americans have in mind is a roadmap, saying that at first let's vote for a president. Let's choose a president for Lebanon, and then let's have a legal government. Then let's have a legal prime minister. At that time, we will try to strengthen the Lebanese army and force Hezbollah to withdraw. And this is what I say, daydreaming. This will never happen, because according to the 1701, it's not only withdrawing from Lebanon, from the border to the Litani River, but it calls also for all militias to disappear, and in fact for Hezbollah to commit suicide. This is not going to happen. This is definitely not going to happen. On the contrary, Hezbollah now is talking about there's talk about we will choose our president, meaning a president of their own, not a Shiite, a Christian, and this will allow the Hezbollah to be much more lenient on some other issues, political issues. This is right now the subject of discussions between different parties in Lebanon. But lately, Nabi Bari, head of the Speaker of the Parliament, has said there's no ground for such a solution. As you said, Maurice, we are in a very difficult situation with Lebanon. And the only way right now that we can advance, because I mean we cannot wait. I mean the 80,000 inhabitants cannot wait forever, for 2 years at least, when the conflict with Gaza will be ended, and then the troops will come back to in the northern part of Israel. Most of them will be tired from this war. So there's a situation that the government has to decide now what to do, and if they don't decide now, then that will be too late in a few months from now.
So if the Lebanese leadership, the current Lebanese leadership, is rejecting even calls from France, and I'm sure everyone's aware of the historical connection between France and Lebanon. France was really like Great Britain as having the mandate over Palestine and creating Israel. So France had the mandate over Lebanon, over Syria. And so there is that tremendous historical connection there. And so if they're now rejecting even French intervention, they're rejecting US suggestions for this roadmap to a more stable Lebanon.
Moise, in 2020, there was this explosion in the port of Beirut. A huge explosion that caused the death of hundreds and the wounding thousands, and destroying 1/3 of the capital of Beirut. 1/3 of the capital was destroyed, and part of the synagogue was also destroyed in Wadi Abu Jmil. Anyway, the French offered money for compensation. The money never found the people who should have received the money. And the port is still in its situation as it was in 2020. This is Lebanon. Lebanon is a corrupt state. As you said, it's a failed state. This is no state. Anyone can do whatever you want in Lebanon, and Hezbollah. So the Lebanese government decided finally, under pressure, to choose a judge that would investigate the whole issue of what happened in the port. 3 judges were chosen, one after the other. They had to resign because Hezbollah said, we will not answer any question. We will not answer anything.
Wasn't that the same that happened with the investigation of the assassination of Rafik Hariri?
Exactly so. Exactly so.
It's the same. We're seeing the same thing playing out again. This pretense that there can be some type of an independent investigation, but really nothing comes of it. So what I wanted to ask then: so if they're not willing to cooperate with France, they're not willing to cooperate with the US. Are they more willing to cooperate with Iran? Are they expecting that Iran will step in and rehabilitate Lebanon after Israel sends it back to the Stone Age? What's their game plan?
I always remind my friends of this famous speech of Hassan Nasrallah in 1985. 1985. He said very clearly, our goal is to transform Lebanon to be part of the Islamic Republic. This is what this is the goal of Hezbollah. It will take time. At first, they were a militia, small militia. Then they became an army. Then they got the permission from Iran to enter the government, and now they paralyze the government, and they can choose whatever candidate they want. This is the situation, and they are just gradually taking hold of Lebanon. And from their mini state, there will be the state in a few years from now. It is if it goes like this. So Iran is not interested in something else right now. Iran is interested in transforming Lebanon into another part of the Islamic Republic. This is, I mean, this will begin from the Mediterranean Sea, going to Syria, going to Iraq, and then to Iran. And as such, I mean, Iran will definitely back any decision that Hassan Nasrallah will make concerning the issue with Israel. Now, concerning the issue with Israel, let me tell you something that is not so much politically correct. We have to speak Arabic. We have to speak Hezbollah. We have to speak their language. If we don't speak their language, we'll be lost in this neighborhood. And if this is the only language they understand, because the other language that we speak, we Israelis, we like to compare ourselves as enlightened, civilized, westernized society. Well, this is not accepted by Hezbollah. We have to prove to Hezbollah that we are the same kind that they are. And if we prove that, then we will have the right to exist here, and they will find the way how to coexist with Hezbollah.
And that's really proving that we're multilingual. Maybe if you remember, just a few years ago, when the situation with Hezbollah was also heating up, then the IDF, together with the Prime Minister, released a number of different locations, specific locations where we said that Hezbollah was holding its weapons stockpiles, its long-range missiles in the airport of Beirut and in the surrounding areas and in all different types of locations. Would that mean when you say let's speak Arabic, let's speak Hezbollah, or would you suggest that we now make that really it's not even a preemptive strike, it's carrying on this war to its logical next stage, saying, well, obviously we'd have to take out their strategic capabilities, which, as you said before, and Hassan Nasrallah has now reiterated that he can use his long-range missiles to really strike any point in Israel. That would be something that obviously we would need to strike first. Is that something that you see happening?
Well, first of all, we have no choice. We are directed by the events into a confrontation with Hezbollah. The sooner or later this will happen. The sooner the better for us. The sooner the better for us. And our activities in Lebanon, our bombing in Lebanon, I'm not talking about incursion, ground incursion to Lebanon. We have enough means in order to destroy whatever needs to be destroyed as infrastructure of Hezbollah, and force Hezbollah to withdraw north of the Litani. This is what I'm saying now. And if I were in the position of decision, I would state a statement facing Hezbollah saying that you have a week in order to withdraw. Otherwise, we'll meet on the ground. This is the way that this is the only thing that they can understand, because otherwise they will see any move by us as being a proof of weakness. We don't want war. We have repeatedly from the beginning of this war heard our leaders and the military commanders saying that we are not interested in a war with Hezbollah. We don't want a war with Hezbollah. And then there was the level that we are forced by the American administration. They don't want us to enlarge the scope of the war. So what do you think Hezbollah thinks about that? He thinks that Israel doesn't want a war because it's weak. He thinks that we are under the influence of the U.S. administration, and we need their permission to do anything. This is what he understands. Instead of us formulating our position and saying to Hezbollah, gentlemen, listen to us very carefully. A week from now, if you're still in your position, well, we'll meet you on the ground.
So really, what we need to do is that the understanding that this war with Lebanon is unfortunately inevitable. That's the understanding, not because Israel is interested in it, but because Hassan Nasrallah appears to be so dead set on going to this war and really extending this war out, and so Israel needs to make that really calculated response as to what to do.
Now, Maurice, I heard yesterday the speech. So much hatred, so much hostility. You cannot imagine the words he chose in order to describe Israel as a society, as a state, as an entity. And it was part of it was anti-Semitic, and part of it was anti-Israeli, and then this was a show of I don't remember a war-like speech like this one that I heard yesterday. And this is what he intends to project on us, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. We should just project the same for him.
Now for that, I have to obviously the question that I have to ask you, Jacques, is to what extent and I know this is really a crazy question, but it's something that comes up and is often discussed, and sometimes the response is different. To what extent should we just say that Hassan Nasrallah is just talking, as they say in Hebrew, gavoa gavoa? He's talking in tremendous rhetoric, but at the end of the day, he's not actually going to do anything. To what extent should we take him for his word and treat seriously his threats to extend and expand Hezbollah's war against Israel?
No, Maurice, let me remind you, he was the one who sent drones on the Karish gas field. He was the one who sent his troops in order to destroy all the cameras on the border. He was the guy who let the terrorists enter the border and go up to Megiddo. And there he put his device, and there was this explosion. And then those rockets that he fired against Israel. Now, since the beginning of this war, he has got, although he has lost 150 of his fighters, but he has caused damage. 50% and more of our localities are destroyed by his missiles. 50% of the houses in Manara are destroyed. The first rows in Metula, in Misgav, and in Shlomi are destroyed. The farms are the farms are destroyed, and this is what he's doing day after day with his anti-tank missiles. He is just targeting those places. Can we allow that? Could you imagine that this was to happen a year ago? Now he's firing missiles with 400 kilos of explosives against our positions on the border. We don't realize that we are at war with Hezbollah day after day. He is firing missiles, anti-tank missiles. He's firing mortars. He's firing rockets against Israel. This is the case. How long can we accept this situation? I mean, there's no government in the world that would have accepted such a situation.
I mean, that really has been the situation, as we've really reported day in, day out, that we have that constant war of attrition. That not only have now 160 of the Hezbollah terrorists been killed, including 9 just in the last 24 hours. We have also lost a number of soldiers, a number of civilians, and that death toll keeps on growing on both sides, because we are at war. Just it's being kept on a relatively low gas. Now, that when we extend out the picture into the whole of the north, we're not only talking about Hezbollah, we're talking about also the threat from the Iranian militias in Syria as well. And really what you described now of Hezbollah's attacks along the border is really the reality that we had with Israel and Syria pre the 5th of June 1967, where the Syrians were sitting on the Golan Heights and really shooting and firing mortars at the kibbutzim and everything in Israel on the other side of the Kinneret, and returning to that situation. Now we have that same war of attrition there. How do we respond not only to Hezbollah, but also to the Iranian militias in Syria? To what extent is there coordination between them? You said that possibly Hassan Nasrallah would allow Hamas to respond in Lebanon. Is the same Iranian hand that's guiding Nasrallah also guiding the militias? Could the response come from there? Could it be just a different picture?
You know, Hassan Nasrallah said that he is coordinated with all the militias, and he said yesterday that a thing that we know, that the Iraqi militias fired the drones against Eilat. So I mean, and this was with his knowledge. So I mean, as you said, now the Iranian militias in Syria have taken hold of all the southern area of the Golan. They are in fact positioned and deployed 100, 200 meters from Israeli positions. And from there, they are just waging an attrition war against Israel. They are firing day after day missiles on Israeli territory. What Israel has decided finally is to stop this this masquerade with Syria. and begin attack Iranian positions, militia positions in Syria. And of course, I mean, this brings the activity of the Air Force in Syria from three attacks per month to about 15 attacks per month, which is quite considerable, because Israel seems to have decided that Syria has to stop being a springboard from that Iran is using for transferring weapons to Hezbollah and to other militias. Definitely, all those militias are coordinated with the blessing of Tehran, and now we don't fire a missile to Eilat from Iraq unless you get the blessing from Tehran. You don't fire, you don't attack more than 150 times American bases in Iraq and in Syria without the blessing of Iraq, and the Americans understand that. This is why they attacked only yesterday. They attacked positions of those militias near Baghdad and hit the command center. I mean, finally they did something. And as far as the Houthis are concerned, I think that the Americans needed this resolution from the Security Council in order to give them legality, or to allow them to act against the Houthis. They did that, if I'm not wrong, at the first Gulf War and the second Gulf War. They asked the Security Council for a resolution that allowed them, in fact, to legalize their activities, their actions against the Houthis.
Yeah, that whole idea of how do you respond to the Houthis in really a sovereign country, but on the other hand, a sovereign country that's interfering with the whole freedom of navigation on the seas. And the Americans have a whole program that's been running for many years of ensuring that countries, really as the maritime policemen of the world, ensuring that countries don't extend out either their maritime borders or aren't operating too far into the exclusive economic zones. That's something which the Americans have been doing for a long time. And now this intervention of the Houthis in that whole area, not only targeting Israeli ships or Israeli-owned ships, or someone who once had an Israeli neighbor who possibly knew the dog of the next door neighbor, and now is somehow connected to the ship. But really attacking all types of ships that are moving.
40% of the commerce between Asia and Europe passes through the Bab el-Mandeb. Every day you have 1,000 ships crossing through Bab el-Mandeb. You cannot stop this. The international commerce is against the Houthis. Certainly, I mean, you cannot create a situation where the international international economy will suffer because of those retarded people in Yemen.
So just to expand that out, also just for 1 second before and we unfortunately need to finish, where's Egypt in all of that? Egypt is losing phenomenal amounts of money from the passage of the commerce of the ships through the Suez Canal. Has Egypt said anything? I didn't see Egypt as part of that coalition against the Houthis. What's Egypt doing?
Well, we didn't see also Saudi Arabia. You didn't see the Emirates. You've seen only Bahrain. All those are suffering. They are all suffering from this blockade. I mean, as you said, I mean, $25 million a day, or 125 million a day, Egypt is losing. Now, Egypt has a problem facing Israel, because now they are afraid that Israel will just unleash the Gazans, and they will invade the Sinai Peninsula. They have deployed tanks and infantry troops, and in order that they will fire at all Gazans that will cross. So this is one problem that Egypt is taking care of, and it doesn't want to appear as backing Israel in a flotilla that is led by the US. The same is right for Saudi Arabia. Another thing that is we have to take into consideration is the fact that there is a real crisis, an existential crisis between Egypt and Ethiopia. The discussions, the negotiations concerning the Blue Nile have failed, and Egypt gets its water. 97% of its water comes from the Blue Nile, and this is stopped at the Renaissance Dam, which means that in Cairo the level of the Nile will be lower by 2 meters, which is an impossible situation, and the Egyptians are just thinking what to do facing Ethiopia, including military action in order to restore the flow of water as it was before the construction of the dam.
I saw one of the plans that were being suggested a while ago, similar to what was being discussed by Israel at some stage, to create some type of a canal from the Red Sea all the way through to the Dead Sea, and a similar idea being discussed in Egypt to flood one of the bigger valleys there in order to really create that basin of water because of this conflict with Ethiopia and really the reduction in the water they're receiving, because most of Egypt's economy is based around that Nile area.
Egypt's side. This is the Nile.
Yeah. And so what we see here, really, the common denominator, what appears to be between Egypt and Lebanon, is that both of these countries are willing to sacrifice so much in order to simply maintain their hostility to Israel. Egypt's losing out. Egypt is also on the bank of bankruptcy, and is willing to lose $125 million a day just so that it can placate the Houthis and not appear to be fighting on Israel's side. They should just say we're fighting on our own best interests. Never mind what Israel would get.
Louis, they have built a base in Berenice on the Red Sea. Huge base. Huge base. I mean, an army is there. And the purpose was at the time saying that they would help, they would assist the Gulf states and Saudi Arabia. This is why they got money from all those states in order to build that base. It's a naval base, an air base, a ground base. I mean, this is a base that from there that the Egyptians could start a war against Ethiopia or join the international effort with the United States, but they have chosen not to do so.
That's incredible. It's countries that are really choosing their own detriment, the detriment of their own people for their own best interests, simply to not be seen as someone who's doing anything that could possibly help the little Jewish state. Jacques, 2 seconds closing remark.
Well, I hope for better days, but these better days will come after bad days. We'll have to go through bad days before getting to the good days.
As you so rightly said, we need to learn many different languages in our area. Palestinians to deal with the Palestinians, Hezbollahese to deal with Hezbollah, and apparently a never-ending linguistic feat in just to understand how we survive here. Despite all the hostility. Jacques, thank you for joining us, and thank you to our audience for joining us. We will be back with you again on Sunday. No program tomorrow, Shabbat, early Shabbat in Israel. So thank you, and in the meantime, stay safe. Shabbat shalom to everyone.